The warning light flashed red across the bridge of the human ship New Seoul. Captain Wu Jinsu sat in his command chair and watched the alien message appear on his screen. The words were translated from the Crowan language into simple human text. Humans of the vessel New Seoul, you will surrender immediately. The planet Kepler 442c belongs to the Crowan Empire. Your people have 24 hours to leave our world. If you refuse, we will take the planet by force. Your colony will be destroyed. This is your only warning. Wu Jinsu read the message twice. He had expected this moment for weeks. The human colony on Kepler 442c had been growing for 6 months. 50,000 people now called the planet home. They had built cities, farms, and schools. They had made the dead world green again with earth plants and animals. But the Crowans wanted it back. The captain pressed a button on his chair. Kim Dae-ho to the bridge. Park Mina to the bridge. Lee Summon to the bridge. Emergency meeting in 5 minutes. Wu Jinsu stood up and walked to the large window that showed space ahead. The planet Kepler 442c hung in the darkness like a blue and green jewel. It looked so much like Earth that it made his heart ache. His own daughter lived down there with her new husband. They had started a small farm near the main city. The bridge doors opened. Kim Dae-ho entered first. He was a tall man with kind eyes and gray hair. He carried a tablet computer and wore the blue uniform of the diplomatic corps. Dae-ho had spent 10 years studying alien species. He spoke 7 different alien languages. Park Mina came next. She was shorter than Dae-ho but moved like a soldier. Her black hair was cut short and her eyes were always watching for danger. She wore the green uniform of colonial security. A laser pistol hung at her side. Mina had fought in 3 different wars before joining the colonial service. Lee Summon was the last to arrive. She was the youngest of the 3, only 25 years old. Her hands were always dirty from working on machines. She wore the gray uniform of the engineering corps. Oil stains covered her sleeves. Summon could fix anything that used electricity or fuel. Show them the message, Wu Jinsu said. The 3 officers read the Crowan warning on the main screen. Dae-ho adjusted his glasses and made notes on his tablet. Park Mina crossed her arms and frowned. Lee Summon wiped her hands on a cloth and shook her head. How long until they arrive? Park Mina asked. 6 hours, Wu Jinsu replied. Maybe less. Our sensors show a large Crowan fleet moving toward the planet. At least 20 ships. What do we know about their leader? Dae-ho asked. Wu Jinsu pressed another button. A new image appeared on the screen. It showed a huge alien creature with blue-black skin and 4 arms. Its head was shaped like a triangle with 3 red eyes. Sharp teeth filled its mouth. This is Overlord Vexthara, the captain said. He commands the Crowan 3rd Battle Fleet. Intelligence reports say he has conquered 17 different star systems. He uses fear as a weapon. His enemies usually surrender without fighting. Dae-ho studied the image carefully. What kind of fear tactics? Bioengineered monsters, Park Mina answered. She had read the same reports. The Crowans create living weapons, huge creatures designed to hunt and kill. They use them to terrify other species into giving up. Lee Summon looked puzzled. Why not just use regular weapons? Bombs and missiles work fine. Because fear is cheaper, Dae-ho explained. If your enemy surrenders before the battle starts, you do not lose any soldiers or ships. You just take what you want, Wu Jinsu nodded. It has worked for them many times. The crystal people of Altair Prime surrendered after seeing just one of their creatures. The gas-breathing aliens of Proxima Beta gave up their entire home system without firing a shot. But we are not giving up, Park Mina said. It was not a question. No, the captain replied. We have 50,000 people down there. They have homes, families, and lives. We cannot just abandon them. So we negotiate, Dae-ho said. He made more notes on his tablet. I will meet with this Overlord Vexthara. Maybe we can reach an agreement. Park Mina laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think a creature like that will listen to reason? Every intelligent species can be reasoned with, Dae-ho replied. We just need to find the right approach. The Crowans want something from this planet. Maybe we can share it with them. What if talking does not work? Lee Summon asked. Wu Jinsu looked at each of them. Then we fight. But first we try to solve this peacefully. The next few hours passed quickly. Lee Summon worked on the ship's defensive systems. The journey through Crowan space had damaged several important components. She crawled through narrow maintenance tunnels with her tools and spare parts. Her small size let her reach places that larger engineers could not. Park Mina briefed her security team on Crowan combat methods. She showed them videos of previous battles. The Crowan creatures were fast and deadly. But they had weaknesses. They were living beings, not machines. They could be hurt, confused, or distracted. Remember, she told her soldiers, these monsters are designed to scare you. Do not let them. Stay calm, aim carefully, and work together. Deho studied everything he could find about Crowan culture and biology. He learned their basic language sounds. He read about their history and social structure. The Crowans were warriors, but they followed strict rules about honor and combat. Captain Wu Jinsu coordinated with the colony below. The civilian leaders wanted to evacuate immediately. They had children to protect. But the military commanders wanted to fight. They had spent months building defenses. Give us time, Wu Jinsu told them over the radio. Let our diplomat try to make a deal. If that fails, we will help you fight. The Crowan fleet arrived exactly when predicted. 20 dark ships appeared near the planet. They were shaped like giant insects with curved wings and multiple weapon ports. The largest ship was twice the size of New Sol. A new message appeared on the bridge screen. This time it came with a visual transmission. Overlord Vexthara appeared in person. He was even more frightening than his picture suggested. His 3 red eyes glowed with anger. His forearms moved constantly, making threatening gestures. Human Captain, the alien said in broken human language. You did not leave. Now you will face the consequences. I will demonstrate the power of the Crowan Empire. Your people will learn to fear us properly. The transmission ended. Immediately, another message arrived. It contained coordinates on the planet's surface. You will meet me here in 2 hours, the message read. Bring your diplomat. I will show him why resistance is useless. Come alone or your colony dies. Wu Jinsu looked at the coordinates. They marked a flat area near the main human city. It was far enough from buildings to prevent damage, but close enough for the colonists to see what happened. He wants to put on a show, Park Mina said. Scare the colonists into giving up. Then we give him an audience, Deho replied. He closed his tablet and stood up. Prepare the shuttle. I am going down there. Not alone, the captain said. Take Park Mina and Lee Soman with you. The message said to come alone. I do not care what the message said, Wu Jinsu replied firmly. We are not leaving our diplomat defenseless on an alien world. 30 minutes later, the 3 humans sat in their shuttle as it descended toward the planet. Through the windows, they could see the Crowan ships following them down. The alien vessels landed in a circle around the meeting coordinates. Lee Soman checked the shuttle's systems one last time. Everything is working perfectly, she reported. Park Mina inspected her equipment. She carried her sidearm, a medical kit, and a small scanner. I wish we knew more about what we are walking into. Deho reviewed his notes. We know enough. The Crowans respect strength, but they understand logic. We will try both approaches. The shuttle touched down on the designated spot. Through the windows, they could see massive alien structures rising from the ground. The Crowans had built something while their fleet was traveling. Dark towers stretched toward the sky. Strange lights pulsed along their surfaces. How did they build all that so quickly? Lee Soman asked. Bioengineering, Deho replied. Those are not buildings. They are living creatures shaped like structures. The Crowans do not build with metal and stone. They grow everything they need. The shuttle door opened. Hot alien air rushed inside. The 3 humans stepped onto the surface of Kepler 442c and walked toward whatever was waiting for them in the living alien amphitheater ahead. The 3 humans walked toward the towering alien structures. Each step brought them closer to the dark towers that pulsed with strange light. The ground beneath their feet felt warm and slightly soft, like walking on living skin. This is definitely organic material, Lee Soman whispered. She knelt down and touched the surface with her scanner. The readings show cellular activity. The entire area is one giant living organism. Park Mina kept her hand near her weapon. Stay alert. We do not know what this thing might do. Kim Deho looked up at the towers with fascination. Incredible bioengineering. They grew an entire amphitheater in just a few hours. The Crowans must have seeds or spores that develop into predetermined shapes. As they approached the main entrance, the wall began to change. A doorway opened like a mouth, complete with what looked like teeth along the edges. Warm air flowed out, carrying strange smells that reminded them of hospitals and zoos. Well, that is not terrifying at all, Park Mina said quietly. The humans stepped through the organic doorway. Inside, the walls glowed with soft bioluminescent light. The ceiling was high above them, supported by structures that looked like giant ribs. Everything curved and flowed like the inside of some massive creature. They walked down a corridor that sloped gently downward. The floor felt spongy under their boots. Small organisms in the walls pulsed with different colors as they passed. It was beautiful and disturbing at the same time. The architecture is designed to intimidate, Deho observed, making visitors feel like they are being swallowed alive. Very effective psychological warfare. Not working on me, Lee Soman replied. I find it interesting. How do they control the growth patterns? What prevents the structure from continuing to grow and changing shape? They reached the end of the corridor and emerged into a vast circular chamber. The amphitheater was enormous, easily large enough to hold 10,000 spectators. Rows of seats curved up the walls like the inside of a gigantic bowl. But the seats were not empty. Crowan warriors filled the lower sections. Each alien stood 12 feet tall with the same triangular head and 4 arms as their leader. Their skin colors ranged from deep blue to black, with patterns of silver markings. They wore armor that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured, with spikes and ridges that matched their natural body structure. Behind each warrior stood a cage. Inside the cages, creatures moved in the shadows. The humans could hear growling, hissing, and sounds they could not identify. The smell of the alien beasts filled the air. At the center of the amphitheater sat a throne. It was carved from what looked like bone, white and yellow with strange symbols etched into its surface. The throne was massive, built for someone much larger than even the Crowan warriors, and on that throne sat Overlord Vexthara. He was bigger than the humans had expected. Much bigger. Where the other Crowan stood 12 feet tall, Vexthara was at least 15 feet from head to toe. His 4 arms were thick with muscle. His triangular head bore scars from old battles. His 3 red eyes glowed like hot coals in the bioluminescent light. The Overlord wore armor that seemed to be part of his body. Black plates covered his chest and limbs, but they pulsed with the same rhythm as his heartbeat, living armor grown from his own tissue. Humans, Vexthara said. His voice was deep and loud, echoing through the entire amphitheater. You have come to witness the power of the Crowan Empire. You will learn why 17 star systems kneel before me. The alien stood up from his throne. Even at a distance, his size was impressive. He began to speak, his voice growing louder with each word. I am Vexthara, Overlord of the 3rd Battle Fleet, Conqueror of Altair Prime, Destroyer of the Crystal Cities, Master of 1,000 beasts. I have brought death to worlds that dared to oppose me. The Crowan warriors began to chant in their own language. The sound was rhythmic and deep, like drums beating before a battle. The creatures in the cages became more agitated, pacing and snarling. On Altair Prime, the Crystal people thought their cities were safe. Vexthara continued. Their towers reached into the sky like needles of pure light. Beautiful and proud, I gave them one chance to surrender. They refused. The Overlord gestured with all 4 arms. The walls of the amphitheater began to show images like a 3-dimensional movie. The humans could see the crystal cities he described, tall, delicate structures made of some kind of transparent material that caught and reflected light in rainbow patterns. I released my children upon their world, Vexthara said. My beautiful, deadly children. The crystal people watched their cities crumble. They heard their loved ones scream. Within 1 day, they begged for mercy. The images changed to show the aftermath. The crystal cities lay in ruins. Dark shapes moved through the wreckage too fast to see clearly. The gas breathers of Proxima Beta lasted even less time. The Overlord continued. They lived in floating cities in their methane atmosphere. They thought the toxic air would protect them. But my creatures can adapt to any environment. More images appeared. Floating structures engulfed in clouds of poison gas. Explosions lighting up an alien sky. 14 other worlds have felt my wrath, Vexthara boomed. Each time the result was the same. Fear, surrender, and submission to the Crowan Empire. The Overlord's 3 red eyes focused on the 3 humans standing at the bottom of the amphitheater. They looked so small compared to the massive alien and his warriors. But you, he said, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper that still carried clearly through the chamber. You do not seem afraid. Kim Deho adjusted his glasses and pulled out his tablet. He began typing notes as if he were attending a lecture at a university. Your conquests show an impressive understanding of psychological warfare, Deho said in a calm, professional voice. The use of unknown creatures to trigger primal fear responses in prey species is quite effective. Park Mina stood with her feet slightly apart, hands relaxed at her sides. She looked like she was waiting for a bus rather than facing down an alien warlord and his army. Lee Somin was studying the bioluminescent walls with obvious interest. She held up her scanner and took readings of the living architecture. Fascinating cellular structure, she murmured to herself. I wonder how they program the growth patterns. The Crowan warriors exchanged confused glances. This was not how other species had reacted to their overlord's intimidation display. Usually by this point the enemy representatives were trembling or trying to run away. Vexithara felt his anger rising. His armor plates began to glow brighter as his body temperature increased. You will show proper fear and respect, humans. I am speaking to you. Oh, we are listening, Deho replied politely. Please continue. This is all very educational. I am particularly interested in your bioengineering techniques. Educational? Vexithara's voice rose to a roar. I am not here to educate you. I am here to demonstrate why you should fear the Crowan Empire. We understand that, Parkmina said. But honestly, we have heard this kind of speech before. Our own history is full of conquerors who used fear as a weapon. It usually does not end well for them. Lee Somin looked up from her scanner. Could you tell us more about how you grow these structures? The cellular organization is unlike anything in our databases. The young engineer's scientific curiosity seemed to frustrate Vexithara even more than the other's calm responses. His 3 eyes began to glow brighter. Silence, he commanded. You will not interrupt me with your questions. Sorry, Lee Somin said, not sounding sorry at all. But this is really remarkable work. Do you use genetic templates or do the organisms have some kind of built-in architectural programming? Several Crowan warriors stepped forward, but Vexithara held up one of his massive hands to stop them. He stared at the 3 humans with growing disbelief. You are not reacting properly, he said. Other species tremble before me. They beg for mercy. They offer tribute and surrender. Why do you not fear me? Kim Deho looked up from his tablet. Should we be afraid? You have not actually threatened us yet. You have just told us stories about other planets. Those were not stories, Vexithara snarled. Those were warnings. Demonstrations of what happens to those who defy the Crowan Empire. Understood, Deho replied. But we are not the crystal people or the gas breathers. We are humans. Our reactions might be different. Parkmina nodded. Every species has its own psychology. What works on one might not work on another. Vexithara felt something he had not experienced in many years. Uncertainty. These humans were not behaving according to any pattern he understood. They should be terrified. They should be begging for their lives. Instead, they were taking notes. The Overlord decided it was time to show them something that would break their strange calm. He raised all 4 arms and let out a call that shook the entire amphitheater. Very well, he thundered. If words do not frighten you, perhaps you need a more direct demonstration. Behold the crown jewel of Crowan bioengineering, the creature that has devoured the champions of a dozen worlds. The far end of the amphitheater began to change. Massive doors started to grind open, revealing darkness beyond. The sound of heavy breathing echoed from the shadows. Something huge was coming. The massive doors at the far end of the amphitheater opened completely. Darkness spilled out like black water. The breathing sounds grew louder, accompanied by the scraping of claws on stone. Something enormous moved in the shadows. Then it stepped into the light. The creature was a nightmare made real. It stood 20 feet tall on powerful hind legs like a dinosaur. Its body was covered in thick armored plates that gleamed like black metal. 6 arms jutted from its torso, each ending in claws as long as swords. Its head was shaped like a wolf's skull but 3 times larger, with rows of teeth that dripped acid. The beast's eyes glowed yellow in the bioluminescent light. Steam rose from its nostrils with each breath. When it opened its mouth, the humans could see a throat that seemed to go down forever. Behold the Ravager, Overlord Vexithara announced with pride. The perfect killing machine, bioengineered from the deadliest predators of 50 different worlds. It has never known defeat. The Crowan warriors began chanting again, louder this time. The creatures in their cages responded with howls and roars of their own. The entire amphitheater filled with the sounds of hungry beasts. The Ravager let out a roar that shook dust from the ceiling. The sound was so loud and terrible that several of the Crowan warriors stepped backward. On any other world, such a roar would have sent entire armies running in terror. Kim Deho pulled out his tablet and began recording. Remarkable adaptation, he said to Lee Somin. Look at the muscle structure in those hind legs. And the way the arms are positioned for maximum striking range. Lee Soman nodded enthusiastically. The armor plating shows clear signs of metal incorporation. Probably iron or titanium grown directly into the bone structure. Very efficient design. Park Mina yawned and checked her watch. Is this going to take much longer? We have a schedule to keep. The complete lack of fear in the humans sent a wave of confusion through the Crowan ranks. Several warriors looked at each other with obvious bewilderment. Their own creatures were bred for war, but even they showed respect for the Ravager. Vexithara's 3 red eyes blazed with anger. You do not understand, he roared. This creature has killed the champions of a dozen worlds. It has devoured entire armies. Planets have surrendered rather than face it in battle. I can see why, Deho replied calmly. It is clearly a very effective predator. The bioengineering work is impressive. How long did it take to develop? You should be on your knees, Vexthara snarled. You should be begging for mercy. Why? Park Mina asked. It is just a big animal. We have big animals on Earth, too. The Overlord commanded the Ravager to demonstrate its power. The beast moved to one side of the arena where several large blocks of stone had been placed. With casual swipes of its claws, it reduced the blocks to powder. Its acid breath melted metal bars into steaming puddles. Impressive strength, Lee Soman observed. But the acid production must require enormous amounts of energy. How often does it need to feed? Vexithara was beyond frustrated now. He had shown these humans the most terrifying creature in the known galaxy, and they were treating it like a science experiment. Why do you not fear it? He demanded. Should we? Deho asked. It is contained and under your control. There is no immediate threat to us. One word from me and it will rip you to shreds, Vexithara threatened. That would be unfortunate, Park Mina said, but it would also end our negotiations. Is that what you want? The alien overlord realized he was losing control of the situation. These humans were not reacting to his psychological warfare at all. They seemed genuinely unimpressed by his greatest weapon. What manner of creatures are you? He asked. We are humans, Deho replied simply. We come from a planet called Earth. Earth must be a world of great peace, one of the Crowan warriors said. These beings have never known fear or danger. Park Mina laughed. Earth peaceful? That is funny. Our planet is one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. Impossible, Vexithara said. You show no fear of the Ravager. Because we have seen worse, Lee Soman explained. On Earth, we have creatures that make your Ravager look tame. The humans began describing their homeworld. They told the Crowans about sharks that could smell blood from miles away, about bears that could crush cars with their paws, about tiny spiders whose bite could kill a grown human in minutes. We have snakes that can swallow a man whole, Park Mina added, and bacteria so deadly that a single drop can wipe out entire cities. But surely your people flee from these monsters, a Crowan warrior said. No, Deho replied. We study them. We learn from them. Many humans keep dangerous animals as pets or work with them every day. The Crowans exchanged worried glances. What kind of species would voluntarily live alongside deadly predators? Our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters that destroyed other species. Park Mina continued. We do not surrender to threats. We adapt to them. Lee Soman pulled up images on her tablet. She showed the aliens pictures of human scientists working with poisonous snakes, handling radioactive materials, and diving with great white sharks. This is impossible, Vexithara said, but his voice was less certain now. Evolution, Deho explained. Species that survive develop whatever traits they need. We needed to be curious, adaptable, and stubborn. Fear was a luxury we could not afford. The Ravager seemed to sense the change in mood. It began pacing restlessly, looking back and forth between its master and the strange creatures that showed no fear. Your beast is magnificent, Deho said to Vexithara, but it is still just a predator. We have dealt with predators for millions of years. It is a weapon of war, the Overlord insisted. So are nuclear bombs, Park Mina replied. We invented those too, and we learned to control them. The Crowan warriors were becoming visibly nervous. Their entire military doctrine was based on fear and intimidation. If these humans were immune to such tactics, what did that mean for the Crowan Empire? Vexithara decided to try a different approach. Perhaps you are brave, he admitted, but you are only 3. I have a fleet of 20 ships and thousands of warriors. And we have 50,000 colonists who will not give up their homes without a fight, Park Mina responded. You would fight us? A Crowan warrior asked. If we have to, Deho said. But we would prefer to find a peaceful solution. There can be no peace, Vexithara declared. This world belongs to the Crowan Empire. According to whom? Lee Soman asked. Did you file a territorial claim with the Galactic Council? Do you have historical evidence of prior settlement? The Overlord hesitated. The truth was that the Crowans had simply decided they wanted the planet. They had not bothered with legal formalities. We claim it by right of conquest, he said finally. But you have not conquered it yet, Deho pointed out. Our people are still there, and they are not leaving voluntarily. The human diplomat's calm logic was beginning to crack Vexithara's confidence. This was not how these encounters were supposed to go. The enemy was supposed to be terrified into submission by now. You cannot defeat us, the Overlord said, but he sounded less certain. Maybe not, Park Mina agreed, but we will make you pay a heavy price for victory. Is this planet worth losing half your fleet? The Crowan warriors began murmuring among themselves. They had signed up to conquer weak, frightened civilizations. Fighting a species that showed no fear was a very different proposition. Vexithara raised all forearms for silence. Enough words, he roared. You will witness the true power of the Ravager. Then you will know fear. The Overlord turned to his greatest creation. Kill them, he commanded. But as the Ravager moved toward the three humans, something unexpected happened. The creature stopped, tilted its massive head, and made a sound that was almost like a whine. Kim Deho had pulled out a small device and was making soft clicking noises with it. The Ravager stopped in the middle of the arena floor, its massive head turned toward Kim Deho, who continued making soft clicking sounds with his small device. The creature's yellow eyes focused on the human with something that looked almost like curiosity. What are you doing? Overlord Vexithara demanded. Communication, Deho replied calmly. This device produces sounds similar to those used by pack hunters on Earth. I am trying to establish basic contact. That is impossible, Vexithara snarled. The Ravager knows only violence and hunger. But the huge creature had not attacked. Instead, it lowered its great head and made a soft rumbling sound in response to Deho's clicks. Interesting, Lee Soman said. She pulled out her scanner and began taking readings. The creature's stress levels are dropping. Its breathing is becoming more regular. Park Mina observed the beast's body language. Look at its posture. The aggressive stance is relaxing. Its claws are retracting slightly. The Crowan warriors watched in amazement as their most feared weapon began to calm down in the presence of the humans. How is this possible? One of them whispered. Basic animal psychology, Deho explained while continuing his soft communication sounds. Despite all the bioengineering, this creature still has neural patterns based on natural predators. Those patterns include social behaviors and communication instincts. The Ravager took a step closer to the humans. Vexithara commanded it to stop, but the creature ignored him. It was focused entirely on the strange clicking sounds coming from Deho's device. Your creature is not evil, Deho said to the Overlord. It is simply confused and in pain. Pain? Vexithara asked. Look at the biological contradictions you have forced into its body, Lee Soman said, reading from her scanner. Muscle structures from different evolutionary paths fighting against each other. Incompatible organ systems forced to work together. This poor animal is probably suffering constantly. The Ravager made another soft sound, almost like a whimper. It sat down on its haunches like an enormous dog, still watching Deho with those glowing yellow eyes. You see it as a weapon, Park Mina said. We see it as a living being that needs help. It is a weapon, Vexithara insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. It is whatever you made it to be, Deho replied. But underneath all that bioengineering, it is still an intelligent creature with its own needs and desires. The human diplomat slowly approached the Ravager. The Crowan warriors tensed, expecting to see him torn apart. Instead, the massive beast lowered its head even further, allowing Deho to come within arm's reach. Do not touch it, Vexithara warned. Its skin secretes toxins. Only when it feels threatened, Lee Soman said, checking her readings. Right now it is calm. The toxin production has stopped. Deho gently placed his hand on the creature's armored snout. The Ravager closed its eyes and made a sound that could only be described as contentment. When was the last time anyone showed it kindness? Deho asked. Vexithara had no answer. The concept of showing kindness to a weapon had never occurred to him. On Earth, we learned long ago that cooperation works better than fear, Parkmina said. We domesticated wolves and turned them into dogs. We tamed wild horses and made them our partners. We even learned to work with dolphins and whales. But those are weak creatures, a Crowan warrior protested. Wolves are pack hunters that could easily kill a human, Parkmina replied. Horses are powerful enough to crush a person with one kick. Dolphins are intelligent enough to solve complex problems. We did not make them weak. We made them willing partners. Lee Summon was now scanning the other creatures in the cages around the amphitheater. These animals are all showing signs of stress and trauma. They have been conditioned to be aggressive through pain and fear. That is how you create weapons, Vexthara said defensively. That is how you create suffering, Deho corrected. And suffering leads to unpredictable behavior. A creature motivated by fear and pain is not truly under your control. As if to prove his point, one of the caged beasts suddenly turned on its Crowan handler, trying to bite through the bars. The warrior jumped back in alarm. See? Parkmina said. Your own creatures do not trust you. The Ravager was now allowing Deho to examine its various biological modifications. The human ran his hands along the creature's armored plates, noting where natural bone ended and artificial enhancements began. This is incredible work, he said honestly, but it could be so much better if the creature was not in constant pain. How do you know it is in pain? Vexithara asked. Because we have done similar experiments on Earth, Lee Soman admitted. Not on this scale, but we have tried to modify living beings. We learned that forcing incompatible biological systems together always causes suffering. And suffering, Parkmina added, makes any creature less effective, not more. The Crowan overlord was beginning to see his greatest creation in a new light. He had always assumed that the Ravager's occasional rebellious behavior was due to insufficient conditioning. He had never considered that the creature might be acting out because it was in agony. What would you do differently? He asked reluctantly. Start with the creature's natural instincts instead of fighting against them, Deho suggested. Work with its existing neural patterns instead of trying to override them. Use positive reinforcement instead of pain and fear, Parkmina added. And most importantly, Lee Soman said, design modifications that work with the creature's biology instead of against it. The Ravager had now stretched out on the arena floor like a giant cat. It was making soft purring sounds as Deho continued to pet its armored head. Your creature is not a mindless killing machine, Deho said. It is a highly intelligent being that has been forced into an unnatural role. Given the chance, it would probably prefer to be something other than a weapon. What else could it be? Vexthara asked. A partner, Parkmina suggested. A companion. A protector instead of a destroyer. The choice is yours, Deho said. But consider this. Which is more valuable, a weapon that obeys through fear or an ally that chooses to help you? The Crowan warriors were now murmuring among themselves more loudly. The idea of treating their bioengineered creatures as partners instead of weapons was revolutionary. To them. This changes everything, one warrior said to another. If we do not need to maintain control through fear, another replied, our creatures could be more effective. Vexithara listened to his warriors' discussions with growing uncertainty. His entire worldview was being challenged by these strange humans who showed no fear and treated his greatest weapon like a pet. You speak of cooperation, he said finally. But what of conquest? What of expanding the Crowan Empire? Why do you need to conquer other worlds? Lee Salman asked. For resources, for territory, for glory. Earth has resources too, Deho said. But we learned that trade works better than conquest. When you trade with someone, they remain productive. When you conquer them, they become a burden. We could teach you things, Parkmina offered. Our bioengineering techniques, our animal training methods, our diplomatic protocols. In exchange for what? Vexthara asked suspiciously. Knowledge, Deho replied. Your bioengineering is far more advanced than ours. We could learn from each other. The Overlord looked down at his Ravager, now completely relaxed and content under the human's gentle touch. For the first time in years, the creature looked peaceful. You would share your knowledge freely? He asked. Knowledge grows when it is shared, Lee Soman said. The more people who understand something, the better it becomes. And the planet? Vexthara asked. What of Kepler 442c? It is big enough for both our peoples, Deho suggested. Perhaps we could establish joint settlements, learn from each other's colonization techniques. The Crowan overlord found himself considering possibilities he had never imagined. For centuries, his people had expanded through conquest and intimidation. The idea of cooperation was foreign to them. But as he watched his greatest weapon enjoying the simple pleasure of being petted by a creature it should have devoured, Vexthara began to wonder if there might be a better way. Hours passed in the living amphitheater. The Ravager had fallen asleep next to Kim Daeho, its massive head resting on the ground while the human continued to study its biomodifications. Lee Soman was examining the other caged creatures with her scanner, making notes about their conditions. Park Mina stood guard, alert but relaxed. Overlord Vexthara had climbed down from his throne and now sat on the arena floor like his warriors. The formal structure of the intimidation ceremony had completely collapsed. Instead of a demonstration of Crowan power, this had become something like a scientific conference. "Tell me about your wars," Vexthara said to Park Mina. "You said your people do not surrender to threats. How do you fight?" Park Mina considered the question carefully. "We fight when we have to, but we try to avoid fighting when possible." "That makes no sense," a Crowan warrior said. "Battle brings glory and conquest." "Battle brings death and destruction," Park Mina replied. "We learned that lesson the hard way." She began telling them about human history, about wars that killed millions of people and destroyed entire cities, about weapons so powerful they could wipe out all life on a planet. "We created things worse than your Ravager," she admitted. "Diseases that could kill billions, bombs that could crack continents, poisons that could make entire worlds uninhabitable." The Crowans listened with growing horror. They thought of themselves as fierce warriors, but the wars Park Mina described made their conquests seem small. "How did your species survive?" Vexthara asked. "We learned to control ourselves," Park Mina said. "We realized that our greatest enemy was not other species. It was our own destructive impulses." "So you gave up fighting?" "No, we learned to fight smarter. We fight against disease, against hunger, against ignorance. We fight to protect things we love instead of destroying things we fear." Daeho looked up from his examination of the Ravager. "That is the real difference between our species," he said. "When you encounter something that frightens you, you try to destroy it. When we encounter something that frightens us, we try to understand it. Understanding removes fear," Lee Soman added. "And when you are not afraid, you can think clearly about solutions." "But surely some threats must be destroyed," a Crowan warrior insisted. "Sometimes," Park Mina agreed, "but less often than you might think. Most problems have solutions that do not require violence." "What about the crystal people of Altair Prime?" Vexthara asked. "What would you have done with them?" "Learned about their technology," Daeho replied immediately. "Crystal cities that reach into the sky? We would have been fascinated. We would have asked to study their building techniques. We might have offered to trade with them," Lee Soman suggested. "Our metal technology for their crystal knowledge." "And if they refused?" The Overlord pressed. "Then we would have respected their decision and looked elsewhere," Park Mina said. "The galaxy is large. There is room for everyone." The Crowans found this concept difficult to understand. Their entire culture was based on taking what they wanted by force. "You speak as if resources are unlimited," Vexthara said. "In space, they basically are," Lee Soman replied. "Asteroids full of metals, gas giants full of fuel, empty planets waiting to be terraformed. Why fight over one world when you could build 100? "Building is harder than taking," a warrior pointed out. "At first," Daeho agreed. "But in the long run, building creates more wealth than taking. When you conquer a world, you get what already exists. When you build a world, you create something new. And when you trade with others," Park Mina added, "everyone benefits. The crystal people could have taught you architecture. You could have taught them bioengineering. Both civilizations would have grown stronger." The Ravager stirred in its sleep, making soft sounds. Daeho gently stroked its armored snout until it settled again. "Your creature is dreaming," he observed. "I wonder what it dreams about." "Killing and feeding," Vexthara said automatically. "Maybe," Daeho replied. "Or maybe it dreams about running free, about being with others of its kind, about not being in pain." The Overlord looked at his greatest creation with new eyes. He had never considered that it might have dreams and desires beyond its programmed functions. "We have been treating our bio-creatures like tools," he said slowly. "And tools break," Lee Soman pointed out, "but partners can last forever." "How do you know so much about working with dangerous creatures?" a Crowan warrior asked. Park Mina smiled. Because humans are dangerous creatures too, we had to learn to work with ourselves before we could work with others. She began describing human society, how millions of people lived together in cities without constantly fighting, how they had created laws and governments to resolve conflicts peacefully, how they had learned to cooperate on massive projects that no individual could complete alone. Your species builds things together? Vexthara asked. Everything we have was built by cooperation, Deho replied. Our ships, our cities, our knowledge. No single human could create any of it alone. The Crowan Empire was built by conquest, the Overlord said proudly. And how stable is it? Park Mina asked. Do your conquered peoples serve willingly, or do you have to constantly watch for rebellions? Vexthara hesitated. The truth was that the Crowan Empire spent enormous resources maintaining control over unwilling subjects. Rebellions were common, requiring constant military presence. Willing partners are more reliable than unwilling slaves, Lee Soman observed. But how do you make them willing? A warrior asked. By treating them fairly, Deho said. By respecting their culture and needs. By showing them that cooperation benefits everyone. Like you are doing with us now, Vexthara realized. Exactly. We could have brought weapons and tried to threaten you. Instead, we brought knowledge and offered to share it. The Overlord was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything he had heard. His warriors waited for him to speak, but he seemed lost in thought. Finally, one of the younger warriors broke the silence. Overlord, what if they are right? What if there is a better way? You would question the traditions of our people? Vexthara asked sharply. I would question any tradition that causes unnecessary suffering, the warrior replied boldly. Look at our creatures. They serve us through fear, but they are miserable. What if they could serve us through choice? Other warriors began to murmur agreement. The idea was spreading through their ranks like wildfire. And what of our enemies? Vexthara demanded. There are species that will not cooperate, that will attack us regardless of our intentions. Then you defend yourselves, Park Mina said simply. But you defend, not attack. There is a difference, a big difference, Deho agreed. When you defend, you fight for something you love. When you attack, you fight for something you want. Love is a much stronger motivation than greed. Lee Soman had finished her examination of the caged creatures. These animals could all be healthier and happier with some simple changes, she reported. Better nutrition, less stress, more appropriate living conditions. Would that make them better fighters? A warrior asked. It would make them better partners, she replied. And partners fight harder than slaves. The Ravager suddenly opened its eyes and lifted its head. It looked around the amphitheater with an alert expression, as if sensing something the others could not detect. What is it sensing? Deho asked. Vexthara checked his communication device. A message from my fleet, he said. They want to know when to begin the attack on your colony. The moment of truth had arrived. Everything they had discussed was just theory until now. The Overlord had to make a decision that would determine the fate of both species. What will you tell them? Park Mina asked quietly. Vexthara looked around the amphitheater. At his warriors, who were watching him with new understanding in their eyes. At the humans, who had shown him possibilities he had never imagined. At the Ravager, which was now looking at him with something that might have been hope. I will tell them, he said slowly, that the situation has become more complicated than expected. The message to the Crowan fleet was sent. The attack on the human colony was postponed indefinitely, while Overlord Vexthara considered new options. In the amphitheater, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in Crowan history, a conquest was being reconsidered. Kim Deho had spent the last hour teaching Vexthara basic animal communication techniques. The Overlord was now attempting to communicate with the Ravager using simple sound patterns and body language. Try lowering your voice, Deho suggested. High-pitched sounds can trigger defensive responses in predators. Vexthara adjusted his tone and repeated the clicking pattern. The Ravager tilted its massive head and made a soft rumbling sound in response. It worked, the Overlord said with surprise and delight. It actually responded to me. Animals are usually eager to communicate, Deho explained. They just need to be approached in the right way. Lee Soman was working with several Crowan warriors to improve the living conditions of the caged creatures. They had opened several cages and were examining the animals more closely. This one is malnourished, she said, scanning a creature that looked like a cross between a tiger and an octopus. When did it last eat? We feed them when they perform well in training, a warrior replied. That is your problem right there, Parkmina said. You are using food as a reward for violence. Try using it as a reward for cooperation instead. She demonstrated with a handful of protein pellets from her emergency rations. The tiger octopus creature approached cautiously when she offered the food. Instead of snatching it aggressively, it accepted the offering gently and made grateful sounds. It has manners, the warrior observed with amazement. All intelligent creatures have social behaviors, Parkmina explained. You just have to give them a chance to express them. Across the amphitheater, Vexithera was learning to scratch the ravager behind its armored ears. The massive creature was making sounds of contentment that echoed through the chamber. I never knew it could be happy, the overlord admitted. I thought it only knew hunger and rage. Those were the only emotions you allowed it to feel, Deho said gently. But look at it now. This is what it really wants to be. The ravager was indeed transformed. Instead of a terrifying monster, it looked almost like an enormous pet. Its posture was relaxed, its eyes were bright with intelligence, and it seemed to be enjoying the attention. My warriors will think I have gone soft, Vexithera said. Your warriors are learning the same lessons, Lee Soman pointed out. It was true. Around the amphitheater, Crowan warriors were experimenting with gentle handling of their creatures. They were discovering that kindness produced better results than fear. This will change everything, a young warrior said to his companion. If we do not need to maintain control through intimidation, we can focus on cooperation. But what about our enemies? His friend asked. The species that refused to submit to the Empire? Maybe they were not really enemies, the first warrior replied. Maybe they were just defending themselves against our aggression. Vexithara heard this conversation and felt a moment of doubt. What if my warriors are right? What if we have been creating our own enemies through our actions? That is possible, Deho agreed. Fear breeds fear. Violence breeds violence. But cooperation can breed cooperation too. How do we change? The Overlord asked. How do we convince other species that we are no longer a threat? Start small, Parkmina suggested. Begin with your own creatures and your own people. Show them that there is a better way. Success will speak for itself. Lee Soman had connected her tablet to the amphitheater's bioluminescent systems. She was now displaying images from Earth showing humans working with various animals. Look at this, she said, showing pictures of humans riding horses. We turned prey animals into partners. They carry us because they choose to, not because we force them. Another image showed humans swimming with dolphins. These are predators that could easily kill us underwater. But they play with us instead. A third image showed human scientists working with trained ravens to solve complex puzzles. Intelligence plus cooperation equals solutions that neither species could achieve alone. The Crowan warriors studied the images with fascination. The concept of partnership with other species was revolutionary to them. Could we do this with our creatures? One asked. You are already starting to, Deho replied. Look around you. Indeed, the atmosphere in the amphitheater had changed completely. Where before there had been tension and aggression, now there was curiosity and cooperation. The creatures were calmer. The warriors were more relaxed, and even the bioluminescent walls seemed to pulse with a gentler rhythm. Vexithara's communication device chimed again. Another message from his fleet commanders, demanding an update on the invasion plans. What should I tell them? He asked the humans. Tell them the truth, Parkmina said, that you have discovered something more valuable than conquest. And what is that? Friendship, Deho replied simply. The Overlord considered this. The idea of friendship with potential enemies was foreign to Crowan culture. But as he looked at the peaceful scene around him, he began to understand its value. My fleet commanders will not understand, he said. Then bring them down here. Lee Soman suggested. Let them see what we have seen. Let them experience this for themselves. And if they refuse to listen, then you will have to choose, Parkmina said. Between the old ways that bring only conflict and new ways that bring growth and cooperation. Vexithara was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his communication device and sent a message to his entire fleet. All ship commanders report to the surface immediately. Come alone and unarmed. Bring your senior bioengineers. We have much to discuss. Within an hour, the amphitheater was filled with Crowan commanders and scientists. They arrived expecting to receive orders for the invasion. Instead, they found their overlord sitting on the floor, gently petting a relaxed ravager while human scientists explained animal psychology. The newcomer's shock was obvious. Several commanders reached for weapons that were not there. Others simply stared in disbelief. "Overlord," one commander said, "what is the meaning of this?" "The meaning," Vexathara replied, "is that we have been doing everything wrong." He stood up and addressed his assembled officers. For the next hour he explained everything he had learned, about cooperation versus conquest, about partnership versus domination, about the difference between ruling through fear and leading through respect. Some commanders listened with open minds. Others remained skeptical. A few were openly hostile to the new ideas. "This is madness," declared Commander Zektar, the most senior of the fleet officers. "We are warriors, not nursemaids to alien pets." "These are not pets," Vexathara replied calmly. "They are partners, and these humans are not our enemies. They are our teachers." "Teachers?" Zektar snarled. "What can these weak creatures teach the mighty Crowan Empire?" Parkmina stepped forward. "We can teach you how to be stronger." "Stronger? You who show no proper fear of our greatest weapons? Strength is not about making others fear you," she explained. "Real strength is about making others want to stand with you." To demonstrate, Parkmina walked over to one of the newly released creatures, a beast that looked like an armored wolf with 6 legs. Instead of approaching with dominance displays, she knelt down and offered her hand palm up. The creature sniffed her hand cautiously, then allowed her to touch its snout. Within minutes, it was following her around the arena like a loyal companion. "How did you do that?" a bioengineer asked in amazement. "Respect," Parkmina replied. "I showed it that I was not a threat and it chose to trust me." Commander Zektar was unimpressed. "Tricks and deception. The creature will turn on you when it senses weakness. Will it?" Parkmina asked. She deliberately stumbled and fell near the creature. Instead of attacking, the armored wolf nuzzled her gently and helped her stand up. The Crowan officers murmured among themselves. This was behavior they had never seen from their bioengineered weapons. Lee Salmon began explaining the science behind animal behavior modification. She showed brain scans of stressed versus content creatures, demonstrating how fear-based conditioning actually reduced intelligence and effectiveness. "Chronic stress hormones damage neural pathways," she explained. "Your creatures are operating at maybe 60% of their potential because they are constantly afraid. What would happen if we removed the fear?" A bioengineer asked. "They would become smarter, stronger, and more reliable," Deho replied. "Fear is a survival mechanism, but it also limits growth and learning." Commander Zektar remained stubborn. "And what of discipline? Without fear, how do we maintain order?" "Through trust," Vexthara said. He was now communicating regularly with the Ravager, which responded to his signals with obvious pleasure. "This creature obeys me now not because it fears punishment, but because it enjoys cooperation. And if enemies attack us, will your new partners still fight?" "They will fight harder," Parkmina said confidently. "Because they will be fighting to protect something they care about, not just to avoid pain." The debate continued for hours. Some officers embraced the new concepts immediately. Others needed extensive convincing. A few remained completely opposed to change. Finally, Commander Zektar issued an ultimatum. "Overlord, this madness must stop. I speak for many when I say we cannot follow this path. Give the order to attack the human colony, or we will find a new leader who will." The amphitheater fell silent. The moment of final decision had arrived. Vexathara looked around at his officers, his warriors, his creatures, and his new human friends. He saw the faces of those eager for change and those resistant to it. He saw the peaceful contentment of properly treated bio-creatures, and the stress of those still living in fear. "Commander Zektar," he said formally, "you are relieved of duty. Any officer who wishes to follow the old ways may return to Crowan space immediately. Those who wish to learn something new are welcome to stay." The response was immediate. About half the officers stepped forward to stand with Zektar. The other half remained with Vexathara. "You will regret this decision," Zektar warned as he prepared to leave. "The High Command will not approve of your weakness." "Then perhaps it is time for new leadership in the High Command as well," Vexathara replied. As the dissenting officers departed, those who remained began working with the humans to implement new training methods for their creatures. The results were immediate and dramatic. Creatures that had been aggressive and unpredictable became calm and responsive. Bioengineers who had relied on pain and fear began experimenting with positive reinforcement. Warriors who had known only conquest began learning about cooperation. Captain Wu Jinsu arrived from orbit to participate in the historic negotiations that followed. For the first time in galactic history, a Crowan conquest had been transformed into a partnership treaty. The agreement was simple but revolutionary. Humans and Crowans would share Kepler 442c as a joint colony. Human expertise in terraforming and peaceful cooperation would be combined with Crowan knowledge of bioengineering and genetic modification. The humans would help the Crowans develop more humane training methods for their creatures. In return, the Crowans would share their advanced biological technologies with human scientists. Most importantly, both species would work together to spread this new model of cooperation to other worlds and other species. What will you call this new alliance? Captain Wu Jinsu asked during the signing ceremony. Vexithera looked at the Ravager, now peacefully sleeping next to Kim Daeho like an enormous pet. We will call it the Partnership Protocols, he said. A new way of building civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. 3 months later, the joint colony was thriving. Human cities grew alongside Crowan biostructures. Children from both species played together in parks where tamed creatures served as gentle guardians. Kim Daeho established the first interspecies university, where humans and Crowans studied together. Lee Soman worked with Crowan bioengineers to develop new medical treatments that could help both species. Park Mina trained the first integrated security force of humans and Crowans working as partners. The Ravager, now known by the name Gentle Giant that the human children had given it, became the symbol of the new alliance. It could often be seen giving rides to young colonists or helping with construction projects that required its great strength. News of the partnership protocols spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began requesting similar arrangements with both humans and Crowans. The old empire of fear was slowly being replaced by a new federation of cooperation. In his final log entry about the mission, Captain Wu Jinsu wrote, "Today we learned that humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our technology. It is our ability to see potential partners where others see only enemies. By refusing to fear the Crowans, we showed them that there was nothing to fear from us either." The question that had started it all, "Why don't you fear, human?" had been answered not with words but with actions. Humans did not fear because they were too busy trying to understand, to help and to build something better together. And in the end, that curiosity and stubborn optimism had transformed enemies into friends, weapons into partners, and conquest into cooperation. The galaxy would never be the same.